Well, thank you all for being here today. An exciting day as we welcome Scott Harris as our new president of baseball operations, leading us into a new era of Detroit Tiger baseball. Scott comes to us with an impressive background. He's got experience working in various roles and organizations, and throughout the interview process, I would say it was clear that Scott is ready to lead a baseball organization and an excellent choice to lead the Detroit Tigers. His innovative approach and his passion for winning are traits that I think Tiger fans are going to grow to really love, and I believe will translate into winning baseball here in Detroit. I'd like to take a moment to thank several of my colleagues who assisted in this very important and thorough search process. Chris McGowan, who's here seated with me today, Ryan Gustafson, and A.J. Hinch all played central roles. Ryan Garko and Scott Bream made key contributions on the front end of our process. Keith Bradford, Steve Eiserman, and Dave Scrivano each participated. And Sam Menzen, Jay Sartori were helpful towards the end. It took around-the-clock effort, hundreds of conversations with people outside of our organization to ensure that our search was comprehensive, to ensure that not only comprehensive, but we found the very best person to lead our baseball organization. And with that, I'm very excited to introduce Scott Harris, Detroit Tigers President of Baseball Operations.
Well, thank you everyone for being here. It means a lot to me. I want to start first by thanking Chris for this tremendous opportunity to lead the Detroit Tigers baseball operation. I made a really tough decision to leave San Francisco, but I couldn't be more excited about this opportunity. And for me, during the interview process, Chris's innovative spirit and his commitment to culture really inspired me. And I'm thrilled to be here in Detroit right now, and I'm thrilled to be a Tiger. I'd also like to thank Greg Johnson, Rob Dean, Farhan Zaidi, Gabe Kapler, Larry Baer, and the entire Giants organization. That is an incredible organization. They have supported me and trusted me throughout my time there, and I feel very lucky to have been a part of that organization. I also want to thank them for allowing me to pursue this opportunity. That's not a given in this sport, but they look out for their employees, and they certainly looked out for me, and I really appreciate them allowing me to be here today. Last but not least, I want to thank my family for being here today. My fiance, Ellie, my mom, my dad, they all made the long trip last night. We got in very late last night, but I feel so loved and supported that you're here. I also want to thank my siblings, my brother Chris, my sister Casey. I know they're watching on TV right now. Thank you for supporting me through this wild adventure. None of this could be possible without your love and guidance, and I really appreciate it all. Now, before I take any questions, I do want to share some comments on my vision for the Tigers organization. Throughout the interview process, I shared all of these concepts with Chris, and I found tremendous alignment between his vision for the broader organization and my vision for the baseball operation. I will try to distill my vision down to three main concepts, which will account for the majority of the vision. And I'll start with one: we need to acquire, develop, and retain young players. It's not a unique strategy. Most organizations in baseball are trying to do that, but it's exceptionally important for us, and we need to absolutely lean into that over the next few years. The second thing is the best organizations in baseball right now are not only acquiring that talent, they're getting the absolute most out of that talent when they get into the organization. For me, we need to create a culture of development here. You'll hear me talk about this a lot. I believe everything can change and improve. My evaluations can improve. Our in-game strategy can always improve. Our roster construction can always improve. Our development can always improve. Our decision-making can always improve, but so can the players, too, at all levels of the organization. When I think of Detroit, I think of trying to create an environment that inspires players to want to get better and to put in all the work that they can to get better. It also means creating an environment around those players, support staff, technology, coaching, development environments that inspire these players to get better. So when I think of the Tigers of the next few years, I think of free agents who may look to go to various different places across our great game. When they think of Detroit, I want them to think of an environment where they are confident they can come and get better. They can perform at a higher level, they can lengthen their careers. They know that they're going to be surrounded by people in this organization that are going to get the absolute most out of them. I also think that applies to young players. If we have a young player coming through the system, when he finally gets that call to come to Detroit for his major league debut, I don't want him to take a breath. I don't want him to feel like he's made it. I want him to be excited about the next level of development. When he comes in here and walks into the clubhouse, I want him to know that AJ and his staff are going to know everything about him. They're going to know how to support him. They're going to know how to prepare him from the game. They're going to know how to prepare him for the adjustments that the league is already making back to him. That's going to be really important if we're going to build the type of organization that we want to build here. That culture of development has to permeate all levels of our organization, and it has to inspire everyone on and off the field to just find a way to get a little bit better than they were yesterday. And the last point that is integral to my vision for this organization is I believe that the strike zone disproportionately influences just about everything you see on the baseball field. It dictates pitch counts. It dictates count leverage. It dictates length of inning. Dictates the load you're putting on the pitcher's body and how many pitchers you're going to have to use throughout a series. It also dictates the quality of contact that you're giving up and how much contact you're giving up, which therefore influences the quality of defense that you can build and execute behind the pitcher. It touches essentially every part of our game, so we're going to start there. We're going to start with the strike zone. We want to dominate the strike zone on both sides of the ball, and we want to acquire, develop, and retain players that can give us a chance to do that. So with that, I would love to take any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Scott. So we have 2 roving mics going around the room. If you have a question, just raise your hand. And when you get the mic, just say your name and affiliation. That'd be great. We'll start first up here.
Hi, Cody Stavenhagen from The Athletic. Question for Chris Ilitch. What was it about Scott that made him really stand out to you in the search process?
Oh, boy, there was a lot. I would start off with he had a very, very clear vision and plan. I think you just heard that. Through the interview process, he not only laid out the vision and the plan, but how he would execute that plan in tremendous detail. I would also say his approach is progressive and forward-looking on how to win in today's league. And the other thing I would say is his ability to take data and blend data and technology throughout the organization to help us achieve his vision and execute his plan was very impressive. Beyond that, I found him to be very intelligent, very humble, very low-key, and he has a tremendous drive to innovate, and that's something you don't always see with folks in the industry. And I was very impressed by his commitment to innovation, as well as his thinking and understanding how important culture is to shape and make sure that the organization is positioned to execute at a high level. So, I mean, I could go on. There were a lot of things that I really liked about Scott through the interview process, but I think those are, I guess the most important one, he's very competitive and he's driven to win a World Series. As simple as that may seem, not everybody is as aggressive in their thinking and commitment to want to be the best and to win a World Series championship. And I found Scott and I were very aligned in that respect. So those are some of the main things that I saw through the interview process that were very impressive.
Thank you. Next we'll go to the back left.
Brad Galley, WXYZ, Detroit, for Chris Illich and for Scott. The timeline doesn't seem accidental, Chris, in bringing somebody in where there's still baseball being played. How important was that for you to have somebody here, to have Scott now to see what is in the Major League uniform here? And Scott, what have you seen so far, and what does the timing mean for you?
Yeah, so from the time I met with many of you last, we got busy right away on this search process, and it's been a very intensive process. I'm very happy with the timeline and the way it's worked out, because I think we have now the ability to have Scott join our organization, get to know a lot of the people within the organization, still have time this season to make some determinations, you know, from a front office and personnel standpoint, and really throughout our whole system. This is the time of year where there's a lot of change in the industry at all levels of baseball operations, and he'll get to participate and lead that for our organization. So I feel really good about that. He'll have an opportunity to evaluate where we're at from a major league standpoint, and any of our needs as we, you know, start to head into the off season here before long. So I'm very pleased with the timeline and how it, you know, all worked out, and I'm sure Scott has additional thoughts on how it impacts his ability to carry forward.
It's challenging to start now. It's challenging to transition from an organization that you poured your heart and soul into and take on a new challenge. I can illustrate that challenge by sharing that I was watching the Erie-Richmond AA game on Sunday. Erie is the AA team here. Richmond is the AA team for the Giants, and I was really wondering who I should be rooting for. I was checking the box scores regularly and trying to watch as much as I could, but it highlights how difficult it is to make these types of transitions. But with challenges come huge opportunity. The opportunity to get in here now while the season is still going on, and to meet with players and coaches and staff and development folks and analysts is a huge opportunity to get a head start on the off season, and I intend to treat it that way. I intend to try to do as much listening as possible to all of the people here who have been here for a long time. One thing you realize in this sport is you never know players as well as you do when they're in your organization. And so I'm going to reserve judgment on all players and all staff in this organization, because I just don't know them as well as the people in this organization. So I'm going to try to do a lot of listening. I'm going to try to meet with as many people as possible and assess strengths, weaknesses, and then areas of improvement.
Okay, thanks. Next, we go to the middle here.
Evan Petzel from the Detroit Free Press. Question for Scott. Just, you know, when you were going through this process, what was it like from your perspective, and also what was the interview process like?
Again, it's challenging going through these processes because each one of these jobs is all-consuming, and you feel like you're doing two of them at the same time. So again, I want to thank the Giants for allowing me to do this and supporting me through the process. Chris and his entire staff made it as easy as it possibly could be. They were so accommodating at every turn, even you know, offering opportunities to choose the date I wanted to come to Detroit to fit around my schedule. They were so respectful of the other obligations that you have when you're already the GM of another team. So it was challenging, it was anxiety inducing, but I wouldn't be here if I wasn't bullish on this opportunity and what we could build here in Detroit.
Okay, next we'll go over here on the right.
Bob Winowski for the Detroit News, and kind of the same question for each of you, Scott and Chris, is it sounds like it was hard to leave San Francisco where you'd been. What was the allure that brought you here? And for Chris, was it difficult to convince him to come? And how did you convince him?
You want to go first?
Okay, I'll go first. Yes, it was difficult. I've been blessed throughout my career with tremendous opportunity in this game. I don't take it for granted. But when this opportunity came, I was immediately interested in it. I was interested in what they're building here. I was interested in the players they have here. I was interested in the staff that they have here. But when I got to Detroit and when I started walking around with Chris and seeing all that Detroit has to offer, it just felt different for me than any other opportunity that I, had in the past. The combination of a exceptionally passionate fan base, tremendous resources in the division, a head start on some of the things that they're building under the hood that were so inspiring to me, and tremendous ownership and business side support. It felt different. That combo felt different than anything I had experienced. And when it came time to make a decision, it was just something that was too good to pass on.
Yeah, so I would say it's, to go out and to secure and attract a top talent like Scott in this industry is very, very challenging. It's very difficult. It's a very competitive league, and everybody is looking for the best executive leadership. And Scott is widely regarded as a bright, rising star in the baseball industry. And so you add on top of that, he's born and raised in San Francisco. His parents live there. He's a sitting general manager of the Giants. He's got a pretty good situation. It was quite a challenge. Now I'm happy. He's only worked in National League teams, so I think we got a really good chance for his family to love the Tigers. We're American League, right? It's his new team. But seriously, we looked at it as though it were a recruitment as much as it was an interview, because Scott has been very successful in his career. And, I'm excited that he saw the same opportunity that we saw, is this being a great place for him to lead a baseball organization at this point of his career.
Okay, next we'll go to the back left.
Hey, Scott, Jeff Rieger from 97 won the ticket back here. How you doing? Just curious, you talked about the rabid fan base. What's your message to the fans? Is it a message of patience, that this thing might take a little bit to get back going, or would you say it's maybe a message of, hey, we can be competitive a heck of a lot quicker than people think?
A message to fans. I would say to the fans, this is an exceptional opportunity and responsibility, but this isn't my team. This isn't the front office's team. This isn't the players' team. This is Detroit's team. And we recognize that these players and AJ and his coaches will be in living rooms more often than most family members every night when the TV is on. We know that this team means more to the fans and the city than I'll ever know. And so we're going to be mindful of that with every decision we make. We're going to be mindful of that when it comes to making impactful decisions that can change the trajectory of this organization. But it also will be mindful of that with the smaller decisions that seem trivial and insignificant, but ultimately can produce huge returns. As far as the timeline, I am treating this as an opportunity for us to get better this winter. We are going to put our heads down. We're going to string together as many smart baseball decisions as possible, and we're going to look up at the end of the winter, and we're going to have a much better feel for when the most competitive Tigers team is going to come out. That's how I believe every baseball team should be built. I don't believe in strict 5-year plans with specific benchmarks that you have to reach year over year. There's too much variability in this sport to define a plan as concretely as that. I think if we keep our heads down, we make smart baseball decisions, we string one after another together through winters and trade deadlines and draft opportunities and international signing opportunities, we're going to look up and we're going to have a darn good baseball team. So that's my intent from day one, and that will remain my intent through my tenure here.
Next we'll go to the middle here in the front.
Jeff Seidel from the Detroit Free Press. Christopher, you made it clear that you felt like the team took a step back this year. What is your expectation in the short term as well as the long term?
Well, in the short term, I want us to regain our momentum. We had great momentum. You know, you go back a couple years, even last season, you know, as an organization, as a major league team on the field, we saw improvement and we saw momentum. And the intent would be to regain that momentum in some form and keep building, as Scott just outlined. And ultimately, we want to see winning baseball in Detroit. We want to qualify for the playoffs, and ultimately, we want to win a world championship. I mean, we've been very clear. I've been very clear. That's the objective. But for now, let's see if we can't, you know, regain some of that momentum and fashion a better Tigers team, you know, next season and this season, and build from there.
Okay, next will be in the middle on the right here.
Yeah, Tony Paul, Detroit News over here. For Chris, just first, is there going to be a GM, I guess, first of all, as far as the rest of the front office?
Yeah, so Scott will certainly have the freedom to name a GM as he sees fit. He and I have discussed that. As I've mentioned over the years, my intent is to make sure that our organization has all the resources to be highly competitive on a sustainable basis, and ultimately be a championship caliber team and organization. And I'll leave the decision on the GM to Scott.
And Scott, you want to answer that?
I intend to hire a GM. I don't have a timeline for that decision right now. This is day one. I need to, again, do a lot of listening and understand the strengths and areas of potential improvement in the organization. And once I have a better feel for that, then I'll have a better feel for what the timeline will be for that decision.
And then just really quick from you, do you walk into this looking at this as a rebuild, or is it too early to even say that?
Again, similar to my answer in the previous question, I view it as an opportunity to build processes and make smart baseball decisions. And I don't think labels are all that instructive. Labels aren't even a guarantee that what you intend to do will happen. So we treat this as, again, an opportunity to get better this winter. That's what we're going to do, and we're going to make a lot of moves. And you know, a lot of those moves are going to have strong conviction and confidence behind them. Some of those moves are going to be calculated risks. We have to take calculated risks in this organization to narrow the gap between this organization and the other organizations we're chasing right now. That's an opportunity for us to narrow that gap. And I know that when we go into this winter, we're not going to be risk averse. We can't be risk averse. Taking calculated risks as part of a broader strategy of roster building and organization building, it will pay off in the end. And that's how we're looking at it. And again, we're going to put our heads down this winter, and we're going to make as many baseball decisions as we can, and look to see where we're at the end of the winter.
Good, thanks. We'll go right next to Tony there, with Will.
Hi, Will Birchfield from 97.1. Scott, as you assess the players in place on this roster, the young players especially, who catches your eye the most, and where do you think this roster can make the most immediate improvements this offseason?
I think it's a little bit premature for me to opine on that. It's I've never met any of these players. I haven't met most of the coaches. I've talked extensively with some people in the organization about their evaluations of the players, and that's really important to me because, again, they know them better than I do. I need to take an evaluation period over the next few weeks and assess each of the players. I can tell you from the outside, it's exciting having some of these young players, especially the way that they have performed in the second half. So I'm looking forward to meeting them, and I'm looking forward to having those conversations with our scouts, analysts, and front office staff.
We have time for 2 more questions. Next, we'll go back to Jeff.
Jeff Seidel from the Free Press. Christopher, you said that he has an innovative approach. I wonder if you could expand on that. Is that talking about how he evaluates, or the science side of it, or where do you see the innovation?
Well, I'll respond, and then we could turn it over to Scott and let him respond. But through the interview process, it became very clear to me that he places a strong emphasis on innovation and not necessarily chasing what others are doing, but trying to innovate what's next and staying ahead and getting ahead. And so It was very impressive because it's very consistent with the values, quite frankly, of our broader organization, and where through 63 years of business, innovation is where growth occurs, and a lot of value gets added. And so that was very appealing to me in terms of his approach and his emphasis and importance that he placed on innovation. And beyond that, I'll let Scott comment on it if he'd like to.
I've worked for some exceptional leaders in my career. I've been very lucky to work with Theo Epstein, Jed Hoyer, Farhan Zaidi, many others. One of the things that they taught me very clearly is if you're going to do the same thing as every other organization, you're probably not going to do it as well as they are, and you're probably going to be chasing them the whole time. They taught me that it's important to differentiate yourself and your operation. That's where that spirit of innovation comes from. It's probably not that strategic to share exactly what I think we can and should do here to differentiate ourselves, but if you look back at our track records in San Francisco and Chicago, that spirit of innovation and finding ways to differentiate yourself and creating that culture of development is something that carried us, and something that is one of the reasons why we had so much success in those places.
Okay, thank you. So we'll do two more now. We'll go back to Stoney and then finish up with Evan in the front.
Scott, Mike Stone, 97.1 The Ticket. Two things. Is the farm system as barren as we are led to believe? And the second question is, what type of role do you see for Miguel Cabrera on this team next year? Last year of his contract with a hefty number.
Again, those are totally fair questions. I don't have answers for those questions right now. I have to get in and understand all the information that we have on the players in the farm system. I also have to sit down with Miguel and talk to him to better be prepared to answer that question. I have some opinions on the farm system from the outside, but I'm not really sure it's all that fair to share the Giants' perspective of the Tigers farm system right now.
Okay, we'll finish up with Evan.
Yeah, just the last question for Chris McGowan. Just what was your role in this process, and what was this like for you?
Well, it was a great process to be a part of. My role was logistical. There's a lot that goes into it. Chris mentioned how comprehensive things were, and you have such a condensed time frame to make decisions. So working with Major League Baseball and the teams just to make sure everything's staying on track, and we have a good process and we stick to our timing. So that was my role, and it was a great thing to be a part of. And obviously we landed in a great spot by bringing Scott into the organization.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you everyone for being here today. Thanks to Chris, Scott, and Chris for your time. And now we'll do a few pictures on the dais.